The council chamber floated in the void between star systems, a massive station where representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss the survival of their civilization. Today, the chamber was filled with fear. Thalvin stood before the assembled delegates, his reptilian scales shifting from green to gray as stress hormones flooded his system. He had commanded coalition forces for 30 years, and never had he delivered news this dire. "The Vrath swarm has consumed the Pelion system," he announced, his voice carrying through the translation devices each species wore. 4 billion souls, gone in 72 hours. The chamber erupted in distressed sounds. Clicks, whistles, harmonics, and growls blended into a chorus of despair. The court general waited for silence before continuing. "That makes 6 systems in 4 months. Our projections indicate the swarm will reach core coalition worlds within the year. Our current military strategy is failing." A delegate from the Haroon species, beings of crystalline structure who communicated through light patterns, flashed a question. What options remain? Thalvin's inner eyelids closed briefly. Evacuation, retreat, survival of whoever can escape fast enough. The chamber fell silent. 300 years of peace, of cooperation, of building something greater than any single species could achieve alone. All of it crumbling before an enemy they could not defeat. "There must be another way," spoke Velmara, a Sistian whose 6 arms gestured in patterns of frustration. "Some weapon we have not developed? Some tactic we have not tried?" "We have tried everything within our doctrines," Thalvin replied. "The Vrath do not fear death because they are not truly individuals. They are extensions of a single will. We fight to preserve life. They spend it without hesitation. Mathematics favors them." An alarm chimed softly through the chamber. A communications officer approached Thalvin, mandibles clicking nervously. "General, we have received an unusual transmission. Origin point is Sector 447, the frontier region marked as unexplored." "This is not the time for—" "Sir, they claim to be human." Every delegate in the chamber turned to look. The word human passed through the translation systems, and those species who kept historical records felt something stir in their oldest files. Thalvin's pupils narrowed. Humans are legends, stories from the ancient archives. They do not exist. "The transmission is real, sir. They request permission to approach coalition space. They say—" The officer paused, as if uncertain the translation was correct. "They say they are here to help with our war." The general looked to the council delegates. The eldest among them was Kershin, a being whose species lived for centuries and maintained oral histories spanning millennia. The ancient delegate spoke slowly. "When I was young, my teacher shared stories from the before times, when the coalition was still forming. There were rumors of a species from the far reaches, a species that evolved on what the old records called a death world. They were said to be impossible, beings who could endure pain that would kill us, who fought not despite fear, but because of it. Who would choose death over surrender. Fairy tales," another delegate scoffed, "designed to frighten children." "Perhaps," Kershin replied, "but the archives describe their planet. Gravity twice what most species tolerate, diseases that killed millions of their own, predators that hunted them, weather that could freeze or burn, and they not only survived, but thrived. They reached their stars through violence and determination." Thalvin considered this. If such beings exist, they would be dangerous. "Yes," Kershin agreed, "but we are dying, General. Perhaps we need dangerous allies." The vote was close, but desperation won. The council authorized the human fleet to approach under careful observation. Thalvin assigned 36 warships to intercept, with orders to destroy the human vessels at the first sign of hostility. 2 weeks later, the human fleet arrived at the designated coordinates. Thalvin watched from his command ship as 12 vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were smaller than expected, built with angular efficiency rather than the flowing designs Coalition species favored. Scans revealed unusual power signatures and weapon systems that seemed almost primitive by galactic standards. A transmission request came through. Thalvin accepted, and the view screen filled with the image of a human female. She had dark hair pulled back from her face, eyes that appeared almost black, and a posture that suggested military discipline. Her skin tone was what the old records called Asian, from a region of Earth named Korea. "I am Admiral Soman of the Human Expeditionary Fleet," she said through the translation system. "We received your distress signals approximately 8 months ago. We came as quickly as we could." "You traveled 8 months to help strangers?" Thalvin asked, suspicious. Soman smiled slightly. "We spent 300 years thinking we were alone in the universe, General. When we finally heard voices in the dark, we were not going to ignore them, especially when those voices were screaming. How many troops can you commit to this war?" 5,000 ground forces across our 12 ships, specialized units trained for high-intensity combat operations. Thalvin's scales shifted to a shocked yellow. 5,000? We have lost millions. The Vrath deploy in billions. What can 5,000 soldiers possibly accomplish? The human admiral's expression did not change. "General, I think you will be surprised what humans can accomplish when the situation is desperate. That is when we do our best work." The transmission ended, leaving Thalvin staring at the view screen. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged uncertain looks. 5,000 troops. It was nothing. An insult, perhaps, or a misunderstanding of scale. But Kershin's words echoed in his mind. Stories of a species that refused to surrender, that found strength in impossible situations, that evolved in hell and learned to call it home. "Assign them to reserve positions," Thalvin ordered finally. "If the legends are false, they will at least be safe there. If the legends are true—" He paused, his scales flickering uncertainty. "If they are true, then perhaps we are about to learn why some species become myths." The human ships moved into formation with the Coalition fleet, small and unimpressive among the massive warships of species who had conquered the stars through cooperation and peace. No one knew yet that everything was about to change, that humanity was not a legend returning to save them, but a promise finally kept, a promise written in violence and sealed with blood, spoken in a language the galaxy had forgotten but would soon remember, the language of war. The briefing room aboard Coalition Command Station smelled wrong to Commander Jiho. Everything was too clean, too sterile. The air recyclers removed every trace of sweat or stress, leaving only the neutral scent of filtered atmosphere. On human ships, you could smell when the crew was worried. Here, anxiety was hidden behind technology. Jiho sat with his senior staff, watching Coalition officers study them like laboratory specimens. Admiral Soman had assigned him to lead ground operations, which meant convincing these aliens that humanity knew how to fight. Looking at their faces, or what passed for faces among reptiles, insects, and beings made of light, he could see they were not convinced. Thalvin activated a holographic display showing the Vrath swarm's recent attacks. "This is what you will face. The Vrath are biological weapons shaped by hive mind intelligence. They feel no fear, no pain, and no mercy. They exist only to consume and replicate." Hyon, Jiho's second officer, leaned forward with interest. "What is their command structure?" "There is no structure in the way you mean," Thalvin explained. "They are extensions of a queen organism. Kill one, and it means nothing. They have billions more." "So we kill the queen," Hyon said simply. The Coalition officers made various sounds of distress. A Sistian delegate named Velmara spoke, her translator making her clicking sound like words. The queens are buried deep in hive worlds, protected by entire planetary populations. No coalition force has ever reached one. Because you have not been willing to pay the price, Jiho observed quietly. Silence fell across the room. Thalavan's scales shifted to an angry red. We value life, Commander. All life. That is what separates us from the Vrath. That is also why you are losing, Jiho replied without heat. War is mathematics. You fight to minimize casualties. The Vrath fight to maximize yours. They accept any losses to achieve that goal. You cannot win a war when the enemy is willing to spend more than you. You speak of lives as currency, Velmara said, her tone suggesting disgust. Jiho met her compound eyes. I speak of lives as reality. Every soldier who joins my unit knows they might die. We accept this. We train for this. We prepare for this. Because the alternative is everyone dies. Sometimes you must sacrifice the few to save the many. Admiral Soman stood, drawing attention. Perhaps a demonstration would help. Commander Daewin, if you would. Daewin grinned as he stood. He was younger than Jiho, with the kind of smile that made you unsure if he was joking or deadly serious. Usually both. He gestured to several cases his team had brought. We understand coalition forces primarily use energy weapons, plasma, lasers, particle beams, very advanced, very impressive. He opened a case, revealing what looked like ancient technology by galactic standards. Humans use kinetic weapons, projectiles accelerated by chemical explosions. You might call them primitive. A Haroon delegate flashed patterns of amusement. Such weapons are thousands of years obsolete. Let me show you why we still use them, Daewon said. His team set up a testing range in the station's combat simulation room. They placed various materials representing Vrath biological armor at different distances. Daewon lifted a rifle, checking it with practiced ease. This fires a small metal projectile at roughly 1,200 meters per second. Watch. The weapon made a sound like thunder in the enclosed space. The target shattered, pieces flying across the room. He fired again and again, each shot destroying its target with brutal efficiency. Energy weapons are elegant, Daewon explained. They cauterize wounds, very clean. Our weapons are messy. They create hydrostatic shock. They fragment inside the target. They do maximum damage to organic tissue. He smiled that unsettling smile. The Vrath are very organic. Barbaric, someone muttered. Effective, Daewon corrected. Your weapons are designed for precision. Ours are designed for war. Next came Minji, the chief medical officer. She was small compared to most coalition species, with steady hands and a voice that carried authority despite its quiet tone. She displayed human anatomy on the holographic projector. Human physiology is redundant, she began. We can survive with partial organ function. Our blood clotting response is aggressive. Our pain tolerance is significantly higher than most coalition species. We evolved these traits because our planet tried very hard to kill us. She showed scans of injuries human soldiers had survived, wounds that would have been fatal to coalition troops. We heal quickly. We can fight while injured, and our psychology is adapted to continue functioning under extreme stress and trauma. A coalition medical officer, a being with tentacles instead of limbs, made a sound of distress. This is horrifying. Your species is built for suffering. Yes, Minji agreed calmly, and that is why we are good at preventing others from suffering. We know exactly how bad things can get. We have lived through it, multiple times, on our own world, before we ever reached the stars. The briefing continued for hours. Each human officer explained their approach to warfare, and each explanation seemed to disturb the coalition observers more. Humans fought aggressively where coalition forces defended cautiously. Humans accepted risks that others considered suicidal. Humans spoke casually about death in ways that made species who valued every individual life deeply uncomfortable. Finally, Thalvin called for a break. He approached Jiho privately, his scales showing confusion. "Commander, I must ask, are all humans like this, so comfortable with violence?" Jiho considered the question carefully. "We are not comfortable with violence, General. We hate it. Every human who has seen war carries scars, visible or not. But we understand violence, we respect it. And when necessary, we use it. Because we learned long ago that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to destroy what threatens it." "You could be as dangerous as the Vrath," Thalvin said quietly. "The difference," Jiho replied, "is that we choose when to fight. The Vrath have no choice. They are slaves to their nature. We are masters of ours. That is what makes us human." Thalvin studied the human commander for a long moment. "The Council has decided to keep your forces in reserve, observation positions. You will learn our tactics before being deployed to combat." Jiho nodded, unsurprised. "As you wish, General." But Hyan, standing nearby, caught his commander's eye and smiled slightly. Both of them knew the truth. Observation was fine. Learning was acceptable. But when the fighting started, when coalition forces began to break under pressure they could not handle, humanity would step forward. Not because they were ordered to, but because that was what they did. They were the children of Earth, a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years and failed. They had learned to fight back against impossible odds. They had learned to win when winning should have been impossible. They had learned that sometimes legends are not stories from the past, but promises for the future. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that lesson too, the hard way. Crimson Gate Station hung in space like a massive metal flower, its petals actually docking arms for the dozens of ships that called it home. The station protected 3 inhabited systems, serving as both military checkpoint and trade hub. 40,000 coalition troops defended it, representing 20 different species. Everyone knew the Vrath would attack eventually. No one expected it to be today. Jiho was reviewing supply reports when the alarm started. He moved quickly to the command center his unit had established in the station's reserve section, where his officers were already gathering. "Vrath swarm detected," Hyan reported, pulling up tactical displays. "Estimated numbers 300,000 bioforms. They are approaching from multiple vectors." "Coalition response?" Jiho asked. "Defensive positions across all sectors. They are forming up according to standard doctrine." Jiho studied the deployment patterns. Logical, efficient, completely wrong for this enemy. The coalition was setting up to trade fire at distance, minimizing casualties through careful positioning. The Vrath would simply overwhelm them through numbers, accepting any losses to close the distance. "How long until we are engaged?" he asked. Daewon checked his console. "We are in Reserve Section Delta. Per orders, we stay here unless called forward. Could be hours. Could be never." Through the station's viewports, space filled with fire. Coalition ships engaged the Vrath fleet, energy weapons cutting through the biological vessels that surged forward like a living tide. The aliens fought well, their coordination perfect, their aim precise. It did not matter. For every Vrath ship destroyed, 2 more pushed through. The first Vrath boarding craft hit the station's outer hull, then dozens more. The sound of impact echoed through the metal structure, a drumbeat of invasion. Minji set up her medical station, preparing for wounded. "They will bring casualties here eventually. That is when things are already bad." She was right. Within an hour, coalition soldiers began arriving on stretchers, bearing injuries from Vrath biological weapons, acid burns, toxins, physical trauma from creatures bred solely for killing. The coalition medics worked frantically, but they kept their patients far from the fighting, following doctrine that protected medical personnel. Minji looked at Jiho. "This is inefficient. We should move forward, treat them where they fall." "We are in reserve," Jiho reminded her, though his tone suggested he agreed. The battle worsened. Coalition forces held the northern and eastern sectors, but the southern sector was collapsing. Reports came through of entire units being overrun, of defenses breached, of the wrath pouring through gaps in the line. Thalavin's voice came over the command channel, strained with stress. "All units, prepare for general retreat. We cannot hold this station. Evacuation protocols are now active." Jiho watched the tactical display. The southern sector was the key. If it fell completely, the Wrath would control access to the station's main power core. They would turn humanity's defensive position into a tomb. 40,000 coalition soldiers would die or be forced to abandon the station, leaving 3 populated systems exposed. "Commander," Hyun asked quietly. "Orders?" Jiho made the decision quickly, without hesitation. Some moments did not allow time for doubt. "Deploy all units to southern sector. Full combat load. We are going in." "Sir, we do not have authorization," one of his officers pointed out. "I know," Jiho replied, already moving. "Court-martial me later. Right now, people are dying." The human troops mobilized with practiced speed, 5,000 soldiers moving through the station's corridors like a single organism. They carried weapons that seemed crude by galactic standards, but had been refined through 10,000 years of human warfare. They wore armor designed to keep them fighting even after injuries that would kill most species. They moved toward the sound of battle while others fled from it. The southern sector was chaos. Wrath bioforms swarmed through breached bulkheads, their bodies designed for one purpose: killing. They looked like nightmares, all claws and teeth and acid-dripping appendages. Coalition soldiers fired desperately, falling back step by step, leaving their dead behind. Then the humans arrived. Day One's heavy weapons teams set up in the corridor intersections, creating overlapping fields of fire. When the Wrath charged, they ran into walls of metal moving faster than sound. The kinetic weapons shredded biological armor, their impacts echoing like thunder in the enclosed spaces. "Hold this line," Daewon shouted, his voice carrying over the gunfire. "Make them pay for every meter." Hyun led assault teams into sections the Coalition had already lost. Close quarters fighting where energy weapons would breach the hull and vent atmosphere. The humans used blades, chemical explosives, and brutal hand-to-hand combat. They fought in ways that horrified the Coalition observers, but achieved results nothing else could. A young human soldier named Minho held a choke point alone when his squad was forced to reposition. He fired until his weapon overheated, then drew a sidearm, then a knife. When reinforcements arrived 3 minutes later, they found him wounded but alive, surrounded by 17 dead Wrath. Minji set up a field hospital just behind the fighting line, close enough to hear the weapons fire. Coalition medics watched in shock as she and her team treated wounded soldiers under combat conditions, stabilizing trauma cases and sending them back to safety while never leaving the danger zone themselves. "You will be killed," a Sistian medic told her, mandibles clicking with fear. "Maybe," Minji replied, her hands steady as she worked. "But not before I save everyone I can." Jiho coordinated the defense from the middle of the fighting, not from a safe command post. He moved between positions, assessing weaknesses, redirecting forces, making split-second decisions about who lived and who died. His calm voice on the command channel became an anchor for troops who had never experienced combat like this. A Coalition officer trapped in the southern sector sent a transmission, his voice filled with disbelief. "Who are these humans? They fight like demons!" "No," Jiho replied simply. "We fight like humans. There is a difference." The southern sector stopped collapsing. Then it began to push forward. Meter by meter, corridor by corridor, the humans retook ground the coalition had lost. They did not fight carefully. They did not minimize risk. They fought with calculated aggression, trading casualties for territory, accepting losses that made coalition commanders recoil in horror. But it worked. The mathematics of warfare shifted. The Wrath, for the first time in this war, found an enemy willing to match their aggression, found an enemy who did not break under pressure but pushed harder, found an enemy who seemed to thrive in the chaos they created. 6 hours into the battle, the Wrath began to withdraw. Not because they had lost too many, they never cared about losses, but because the southern sector had become a meat grinder, consuming their forces faster than they could achieve their objectives. The hive mind calculated that resources were being wasted. It pulled back to find easier targets. Crimson Gate Station was saved. Coalition losses were heavy. 40,000 defenders had become 32,000, but they had held. The station remained in coalition hands, protecting the systems beyond. Human casualties were severe. 5,000 soldiers had become 3,800, 1,200 dead or too wounded to return to service. Nearly 25% losses in a single engagement. When Thalvin arrived at the southern sector to assess the situation, he found human soldiers calmly checking weapons, treating minor injuries themselves, preparing for the next fight. They looked tired but not broken. They had lost hundreds of comrades but showed no signs of collapse. Jiho met the general near one of the hardest-fought corridors. The walls were scorched and pitted, the floor slick with fluids from both Wrath and human casualties. The smell of violence hung in the air, impossible to filter away. "You disobeyed orders," Thalvin said, his scales neutral gray. "Yes, sir," Jiho acknowledged. "You saved the station. You saved lives I had already written off as lost." "Yes, sir." Thalvin studied the human commander for a long moment. Around them, coalition soldiers stared at the humans with new expressions, not skepticism anymore, something closer to awe, mixed with fear. "The council was wrong," the general said finally. "Humans are not legends. Legends are stories we tell ourselves to feel brave. You are something more dangerous than that. You are real." Jiho nodded slowly. "We tried to warn you, General. Humanity was forged in violence. We spent our entire existence learning how to survive things that should have killed us. We are very, very good at it now." "What you did today," Thalvin began, then stopped. His translator struggled to find words. 25% casualties. My species would consider that a catastrophic defeat. You act like it is acceptable." "It is not acceptable," Jiho replied quietly. "Every human we lost today had a name, had people who loved them, had dreams beyond this war. Their deaths will stay with me forever. But they died so 32,000 coalition soldiers could live, so 3 star systems would not fall. That is the trade we made. We consider it a good trade." The general's scales shifted to something like respect, tinged with sorrow. "I do not know if the galaxy is ready for humanity." "The Wrath did not give you a choice," Jiho said. "Ready or not, we are here, and we are very good at what we do." News of the Battle of Crimson Gate spread through coalition space at faster-than-light speeds. The impossible had happened. The Wrath had been stopped, pushed back, defeated by a species that fought like the universe was ending and only they could prevent it. Humanity was no longer a legend. They were a revelation, a terrifying, necessary revelation that would change everything about how the galaxy understood war. And the war had only just begun. The council chamber was different this time. Where before there had been despair, now there was confusion mixed with hope and fear. Every delegate had reviewed the recordings from Crimson Gate. Every military analyst had studied the human tactics. No one could agree on what it meant. Admiral Soman stood before them, her dress uniform perfect, despite having spent the last 3 days coordinating fleet movements. Behind her, a holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly. A blue and green marble wrapped in white clouds. "You asked me to explain humanity," she said without preamble. "This is where we come from. By your standards, it is a hell world." She cycled through images: volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, earthquakes, hurricanes. Our planet has multiple climate zones, violent weather, unstable geology. Gravity is 0.98 standard, higher than most coalition worlds. Our atmosphere has an oxygen content that would be toxic to many species here. Next came images of Earth's predators: tigers, bears, crocodiles, sharks. We evolved alongside creatures that hunted us. For millions of years, humans were prey. We became predators ourselves to survive. Diseases followed, plagues that had killed millions throughout human history. Our immune systems are aggressive because they had to be. Everything on our world tried to kill us: the air, the water, the other life forms, even each other. A Haroon delegate flashed a question through light patterns. "How did your species develop civilization under such conditions?" "We are social creatures," Soman explained. "Individually, humans are weak. Together, we are unstoppable. We learned to cooperate because alone we died. We learned to share knowledge because ignorance was fatal. We learned to sacrifice for the group because the alternative was extinction." She brought up human history: wars, empires, revolutions. For 10,000 years we fought each other, kingdom against kingdom, ideology against ideology. We refined warfare into an art form because we had no choice. The species best at violence survived to have children. Evolution selected for combat effectiveness. The chamber was silent except for the translation devices working overtime. "Then we reached the stars," Soman continued. "We thought we would find others like us. We found emptiness instead. For 300 years we believed we were alone, that humans were the universe's only voice. Do you understand what that does to a species? The loneliness of it?" She looked across the assembled delegates. "When we finally heard coalition distress signals, we did not hesitate. We did not debate. We built these ships and came as fast as we could because after 3 centuries of silence, we were not going to let the only other voices in the universe be silenced." Velmara spoke, her tone uncertain. "You traveled 8 months to help strangers. You lost 1,200 soldiers at Crimson Gate. Your species accepts casualties that would break our civilizations. Why?" Soman smiled sadly. "Because that is what humans do. We protect, we sacrifice, we endure. Not because we are better than you, but because our evolution gave us no choice. We are built for this. You asked for allies in a war. You got humans. This is what we are." Thalavan stood, his scales showing respect. "The General Staff has analyzed your tactics. They are effective but brutal. Your soldiers fight in ways our troops cannot replicate. We need human instructors. We need your methods integrated into our forces." "No," Jiho said, standing beside the Admiral. He had been invited to address the Council despite his relatively low rank. Crimson Gate had made him famous across Coalition space. "You do not want your soldiers fighting like humans." "Explain," Thalvin demanded. "Coalition species value individual life because you can afford to," Jiho said carefully. "Your evolution did not force you to choose between the few and the many. You built civilizations through cooperation, not conquest. That is beautiful. That is worth preserving. Do not throw it away trying to become like us." "Then how do we win this war?" a delegate asked. "You let us fight it," Hyun said bluntly. He stood with other human officers, all of them bearing the markers of recent combat. "Train your soldiers to hold ground, to provide support, to evacuate wounded. Let humans do the aggressive assaults, the suicide missions, the operations where casualties are guaranteed." You ask us to hide behind you, Velmara said, shame coloring her translation. We ask you to let us do what we are good at, Minji replied. She had come directly from the medical bay, still wearing surgical scrubs. Your medics preserve life through careful technique. They follow protocols. They work in safe environments. Human medics like me operate in combat zones because we can function under conditions that would traumatize your personnel. That is not a judgment. That is biology and culture. Kershin, the ancient delegate, spoke for the first time in the session. You offer to be our weapon, our shield. Does this not concern you? That we might use you as tools? Jiho met the old being's eyes. If you use us as tools, that is your moral burden to carry. We offer our service freely. What you do with that offer defines who you are. We already know who we are. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued for immediate integration of human forces across all coalition operations. Others warned that humanity was too dangerous, too willing to accept bloodshed, too alien in their approach to war. A few openly questioned if humans might become a threat once the Vrath were defeated. Finally, Soman raised her hand for silence. The Council faces a choice. Accept our help and risk contaminating your cultures with human brutality, or decline and watch the Vrath consume you. We will accept whatever decision you make, but understand this. We did not come here to conquer. We came here because we were alone for so long that we forgot what it meant to have neighbors. Now that we remember, we will not let you die, whether you want our help or not. After 3 more hours of debate, the Council voted. 32 species in favor. 15 opposed. Humanity would be integrated into coalition military operations with a specialized role, high-risk assault operations. Missions where casualties were expected, operations that required aggression beyond what coalition doctrine allowed. But there was one more proposal. It came from Thalvin himself, and it shocked even Soman. The Vrath must be defeated permanently, the general said. That means killing a queen. We have located a hive world in Sector 889. It contains one of their primary queens. Intelligence suggests destroying her would fragment the swarm in this entire region of space. He pulled up tactical data. The hive world was massive, covered in biological structures that served as both nest and fortress. Billions of Vrath bioforms protected it. No coalition force had ever penetrated even the outer defenses of a hive world. We are proposing a direct assault, Thalvin continued. Coalition forces will participate, but humans will lead. This will be the most dangerous military operation in coalition history. Casualties are projected at 60% or higher. The human officers exchanged glances. 60% casualties meant death or critical injury for more than half the attacking force. It was, by any reasonable standard, a suicide mission. Jiho stepped forward. Show me the complete tactical analysis. For the next 2 hours, they reviewed every detail. The Queen's location deep within the hive structure, the layers of defenses, the expected Vrath response. Every projection showed catastrophic losses for minimal chance of success. Finally, Jiho looked at his fellow officers. Hyun, Daewon, Minji, others who had survived Crimson Gate and countless training exercises before that. He did not need to ask. He could see the answer in their eyes. We will do it, he said simply. Commander, this is suicide, a coalition officer protested. The mathematics do not support success. The mathematics did not support success at Crimson Gate either, Hyun replied. Mathematics assumes both sides value survival equally. The Vrath do not fear death, neither do humans. That changes the equation. Soman addressed the council one last time. Humanity accepts this mission. We will assemble a strike force and coordinate with coalition volunteers. But understand what you are asking. Many humans will die in this attack. We accept these deaths. because the alternative is worse. But we will remember every name, every face, every person who falls protecting a civilization that is not even their own. Why? Kirshen asked softly. Why would you do this? Because, Soman replied, 10,000 years of warfare taught humanity one lesson above all others. Those who can fight, fight for those who cannot. The strong protect the weak, not because they must, but because that is what makes strength worth having. You asked us to step onto your battlefield. We did. Now you see what we are. Judge us however you wish. But know that when the darkness comes, humans will stand between you and it, even if it costs us everything. The chamber fell silent. The vote had been taken. The mission was approved. In 3 weeks, a combined force of human and coalition troops would assault a Vrath-hive world in an operation with almost no chance of success. 30 coalition ships volunteered. 12 human vessels would lead them. 8,000 humans would deploy for ground operations, along with 15,000 coalition volunteers trained by human instructors over the next weeks. As the council adjourned, Thalvin approached Jiho privately. Commander, I have fought for 30 years. I have never ordered a mission like this. The losses will be terrible. Jiho looked at the general with eyes that had seen too much death already. Terrible losses for a permanent victory. That is the trade we are making, General. The Vrath cannot be negotiated with. They cannot be deterred. They can only be killed. So we will kill them. No matter the cost. You speak of genocide. I speak of survival, Jiho corrected. The Vrath chose this war. They chose to consume entire species. Humanity is simply showing them what happens when they meet prey that learn to bite back. Hard. The preparations began. In 3 weeks, the galaxy would learn what humans truly were. Not legends, not myths, not stories told to frighten or inspire, just soldiers doing a job that needed doing. A job no one else could do. A job they would finish, even if it killed them. Because that was what it meant to be human. To stand in the darkness and refuse to yield. To face impossible odds and fight anyway. To accept mortality and keep moving forward. The Vrath had awakened something the galaxy had forgotten, something that evolved in hell and learned to thrive there. Something that would not stop until the job was done. They had awakened humanity, and humanity was done being quiet. The combined fleet hung in space just outside the hive world's gravity well. 42 ships carrying humanity's promise written in steel and determination. Jiho stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the planet below. It looked like a tumor, covered in biological growths that pulsed with sickly light. 3 weeks of preparation had transformed coalition volunteers into something resembling a cohesive fighting force. They would never fight like humans. They were not built for it, mentally or physically. But they had learned to hold ground, to support aggressive advances, to accept that sometimes casualties were necessary for victory. Ji-Su, commander of humanity's special forces, stood beside Jiho reviewing final preparations. She was small, even by human standards, but moved with the precise economy of someone who had survived dozens of impossible situations. Strike teams are ready. We have 48 hours to reach the Queen once we land. After that, Vrath reinforcements will make extraction impossible. We are not planning extraction, Jiho reminded her quietly. I know, but my soldiers like to pretend we are. She smiled without humor. Helps with morale. Daewon's voice came over the command channel. Heavy weapons teams are loaded and ready. If this Queen is half as big as intelligence suggests, we are bringing enough explosives to crack a moon. Medical teams are positioned, Minji reported. We will have field hospitals as close to the combat as physics allows. All coalition forces report ready, Thalvin added. The general had insisted on participating personally, despite being older than most species' combat age limits. They are frightened but determined. Fear is good, Hyan said. Keeps you sharp. It is the absence of fear that gets you killed. Admiral Soman broadcast to the entire fleet. All personnel, this is Admiral Soman. Today, we attempt something no coalition force has ever achieved. We will assault a Wrath Hive world. We will penetrate to its core. We will kill the Queen. Casualties will be severe. Many of us will not return, but those who do will have saved billions of lives across dozens of systems. You all volunteered for this mission, knowing the odds. That makes you the bravest individuals in this galaxy. Human or not, today you fight with humanity. Today you show the Wrath that there are worse things in this universe than them. Today we go to war. Soman out. The orbital bombardment began. Human and coalition ships rained fire on the planet's surface, targeting the biological defenses that covered the hive structures. The Wrath responded with anti-ship organisms that launched from the surface like living missiles. Space, filled with violence. All teams, begin deployment, Jiho ordered. Deployment pods screamed through the atmosphere, carrying soldiers toward designated landing zones. Wrath bioforms swarmed to meet them. Billions of creatures bred for one purpose, killing invaders. The mathematics were terrible. Even with orbital support, the attacking force was outnumbered thousands to one. But mathematics had never stopped humanity before. Minho hit the ground with his unit, weapons already firing. The young soldier had become something of a symbol after Crimson Gate, but he carried it with quiet dignity. Around him, coalition soldiers deployed, following human tactics they had drilled for 3 weeks. Hold the perimeter, establish fire zones, support the advance. Push forward, Hyun commanded. Assault teams moved deeper into the hive structures, fighting through corridors designed to confuse and trap. The Wrath came in waves, but humanity had learned to fight in waves of their own. Attack, fall back. Let fresh troops advance. Rotate wounded to the rear. Brutal efficiency. Jisu's special forces penetrated deeper than conventional troops could follow. They used demolitions to collapse unnecessary passages, creating a single path toward the Queen. Behind them, thousands died holding that path open. "This is insane," a Sistian soldier gasped, firing at Wrath that seemed endless. "Welcome to human warfare," the soldier beside him replied, changing ammunition with practiced speed. "We are very good at insane." The casualties mounted exactly as predicted. In the first 6 hours, 15% of the force was dead or critically wounded. In the next 12 hours, another 20% fell. The field hospitals operated in conditions that made coalition medical doctrine seem like a gentle suggestion. Minji performed surgery while explosions shook the walls around her, her hands steady as they had been in training, in combat, in every crisis she had faced. A coalition medic asked her, "How do you stay calm?" "I am not calm," Minji replied, working to save a soldier whose injuries should have been fatal. "I am terrified, but fear is just information. It tells you danger is present. It does not tell you to stop working." 30 hours into the operation, Jisu's team reached the Queen's chamber. The broadcasts showed what they found, and even humans who had seen terrible things paused in horror. The Queen was massive, a biological supercomputer the size of a building, pulsing with corrupted life. Around her, defensive organisms swarmed in such density that sensors could not count them. "Well," Jisu said calmly, checking her weapons, "this is going to hurt." Her team engaged. 60 operators against 100,000 defenders in a space that was half cathedral, half nightmare. They fought with everything they had, buying time for the demolition experts to place charges against the Queen's vital structures. Above the planet, Admiral Soman made the call she had known was coming. "All ships, prepare for final bombardment. Target the Queen's coordinates." "Ma'am," her weapons officer said carefully, "we still have 2,000 troops in that structure. The bombardment will kill them." "I know their names," Soman replied, her voice iron wrapped in grief. "I know their families. I know what they dreamed about, and I know what they volunteered to do. Prepare bombardment. In the hive, Jiho received the message. He looked at the troops around him, human and coalition both, exhausted and wounded, but still fighting. He opened a channel to all forces. All units, this is Commander Jiho. In 20 minutes, this structure will be destroyed by orbital fire. Evacuation is no longer possible. Those near the perimeter may reach the landing zones in time. Those of us deeper in will not. To those who can leave, go now. To those who remain, it has been an honor. Surprisingly few left. Most units, realizing they would not make it out, chose to push forward instead. If they were going to die, they would die advancing. More ground taken meant fewer Vrath to threaten the galaxy later. Minho found himself holding a critical junction with 5 other soldiers, 3 humans, and 2 coalition. The Vrath came in endless waves. "You should go," he told the coalition soldiers. "You can still make extraction." "So could you," one replied, a Haroon whose light patterns showed determination. "I am human. This is what we do." "Today," the Haroon said, "we all are human. We stay." They held that junction for 14 more minutes. Long enough. Jisoo set the final charges personally, her team reduced to 12 operators. All of them wounded, all of them aware they had minutes to live. Queen is rigged for detonation. Charges set for maximum structural damage. Recommend immediate orbital strike to ensure complete destruction. Confirmed, Soman replied, her voice breaking for the first time. Jisoo, No speeches, Admiral, Jisoo interrupted gently. We knew the job when we took it. Make sure the galaxy remembers why we did it. That is enough. Jisoo out. She looked at her surviving team. Anyone want to say anything profound? One operator laughed weakly. This really hurts. Yeah, Jisoo agreed. It really does. The orbital strike came exactly on schedule. Human dreadnought Admiral Soman's Pride, the flagship of the expeditionary fleet, executed a suicide run directly into the hive world's crust. The ship's reactor detonated in the heart of the structure, exactly where Jisoo's charges had weakened the Queen's defenses. The entire hive structure collapsed. The Queen died. The coordinated intelligence directing billions of Vrath bioforms in this sector of space simply ceased to exist. The Vrath swarm fragmented. Without central coordination, they became mere animals, dangerous but no longer an existential threat. Coalition forces across multiple systems found their enemies suddenly disorganized, winning battles they had thought lost. The cost was exactly what the projections predicted. 8,000 humans deployed, 3,200 survived, 60% casualties. Among coalition forces, losses were lighter but still severe. 7,000 of 15,000 returned. The survivors were extracted over the following days as coalition ships secured orbit and drove away the disorganized Vrath remnants. They came back changed, carrying wounds both visible and not. Jiho survived. So did Hyun, Minji, and Daewon, though all bore injuries that would mark them forever. Thalvin survived, barely, pulled from a collapsed section by human soldiers who refused to leave him behind. Minho survived, his junction team holding just long enough before falling back to extraction points. Jisoo did not survive, nor did the 47 operators of her Special Forces team, nor did nearly 5,000 others whose names were recorded carefully, completely, by an admiral who had promised to remember. The memorial service was held in space, near where the hive world still burned with residual fires. Admiral Soman stood before the assembled survivors and spoke clearly despite her grief. We lost friends today, comrades, people we loved, both human and coalition. They died far from home, fighting for systems some of them had never seen, protecting species they barely knew. They did this because it needed doing, because someone had to stand between civilization and darkness, because that is what good people do when evil demands a response. She looked across the survivors. The galaxy will remember this battle. It will remember the day humanity stepped fully onto the battlefield and changed everything. But we will remember something else. We will remember their names, every single one, human and coalition alike. They were not casualties. They were not statistics. They were people who chose to fight, who chose to die if necessary, who made that choice freely, knowing what it meant. The Vrath thought they could consume this galaxy because they did not fear death. They learned today that there are beings in this universe who also do not fear death, but who fight for something greater than consumption, who fight for others, who sacrifice not because they are forced to, but because they choose to. That is the difference between monsters and heroes, not the absence of fear, but what you do with it. 6 months later, the galaxy was different. The Vrath had not been eliminated entirely, but they were no longer an extinction threat. Scattered swarms remained, but coalition forces, strengthened by human training and determination, could handle them. Humanity was formally inducted into the coalition with full membership, but their role was unique. Human forces became rapid response teams, deployed when situations were most desperate. They were the firefighters of galactic civilization, running toward danger when others could not. Jiho accepted promotion to Coalition High Command, working beside Thalvin to develop integrated tactics that combined Coalition precision with human aggression. They built something new, something that honored both approaches to warfare. Minji opened an academy for trauma medicine, teaching Coalition medics that sometimes saving lives meant risking your own. Her students came from dozens of species, learning not to be human, but to be brave in the way humans understood bravery. Daewon retired from active combat, but served as an instructor, teaching weapon tactics with his characteristic dark humor. Remember, he told his students, advanced technology is great until it breaks. Kinetic weapons always work, gravity never fails, and determination beats sophistication every single time. Memorials were built on worlds across Coalition space. The inscriptions were identical, written in multiple languages including Human Korean. We were never legends. We were always here, waiting, and when you called, we answered. On Earth, the names of those lost at the Hive World were added to monuments that already held millions of names from humanity's own wars. The tradition continued. Those who fall are remembered. Always, no matter how much time passes. The galaxy learned what humanity had known for millennia, that peace is not the absence of violence, but violence applied with purpose and restraint. That strength is measured not in how much damage you can inflict, but in what you choose to protect. That the greatest warriors are not those who love fighting, but those who fight anyway, because they love something more than themselves. Humanity had been considered a legend, a myth, an impossibility. Then they stepped onto the battlefield and proved that the best myths are the ones that turn out to be true. That sometimes the universe creates beings who can walk through hell and emerge carrying others on their backs. That evolution, given enough pressure, can forge species capable of impossible things. They proved that humanity was not special because they were fearless, but because they were terrified and fought anyway. Not because they welcomed death, but because they valued life enough to risk their own. Not because they were different from the species they protected, but because they remembered what it was like to be prey, to be weak, to need someone stronger to stand in front of the darkness. And now, across dozens of star systems, the children of a death world stood guard, waiting for the next crisis, ready for the next impossible mission, prepared to pay whatever price was demanded because that was what their evolution had prepared them for. The galaxy had called for heroes. They got humans instead. It turned out to be exactly what they needed.